Sorry, everybody. It's your boy MM2K of Geeks, MM2K Gaming, Cloud Dosage, all that great stuff. And I'm back again with another episode of Cloud Meets Mainstream. This is a show where weekly I sit down with you cloud gaming folks like myself, and we talk about certain topics that are not really being discussed on the periphery all like that, but I give you my take on those type of things and how they may help or even hurt cloud gaming becoming mainstream, because that's my ultimate goal. I do understand the differences between cloud gaming, and I do understand the different camps that exist right now, but ultimately we want to bridge those gaps. And as cloud gamers, we really got to understand that there are some olive branches that we have to, excuse me, because I got to lift my mic. Boom. There are some olive branches that we need to make to the mainstream community, because we need them to help bolster cloud gaming and help make it mainstream as well. So with all that said, this is my attempt to talk about the topics that affect the cloud gaming community, but express how, it can help bridge that gap with the mainstream community. Today, we have a very interesting topic, because Ubisoft, who is a lightning rod on the mainstream gaming front, they are loved in the cloud gaming scene. And that's one of the stark differences that I have from a lot of mainstream, I don't want to say mainstream gamers, because look, Ubisoft does do well. They just don't do as well as they want to do, and their public perception has been muddied, right? Like anytime they like, you'll have stuff that is being done elsewhere, but when Ubisoft does it, it's so horrible, right? And because I go through this a lot with the co-host of mine over in MM2K Gaming, Cold Blood. He has a disdain for Ubisoft, and in his opinion, because of who he associates himself to, and all the other stuff, and how his timeline is built, because of his algorithm, he thinks that everybody thinks like him. He doesn't realize that there's a whole community, even outside of the mainstream community, where people are thriving off of Ubisoft in mainstream. You know what I'm saying? And like when the news that Division 2 Heartlands broke, that it was canceled, which is going to be a huge topic of discussion here. When that news broke, a lot of people, mainstream gamers, not just cloud gamers, were upset. And I want to cover this topic in the sense of, I think many of us in the cloud gaming community were disappointed that it was canceled, but we weren't upset. But I expressed my anger towards it, because I know what it's going to do to them on the mainstream side. And what I want us to be cognizant of is, if there's too many hits that they take on the mainstream side, because let's be honest, this is where they get their money from, the mainstream gamers. We're just a small portion of the community. If they continue to take hits on the mainstream side, that unfortunately is going to affect their support of us, and we don't want that, because Ubisoft, really, as far as publishers are concerned, are the biggest supporters in the cloud. I mean, they are like everywhere on the cloud that they can be. They support Amazon Luna, they supported Stadia. I mean, they really, went all in on the cloud. And I truly feel that if they were able to get platforms like Ubisoft Plus up and running day one with Google Stadia, that would have turned the tide as far as perception is concerned. That's how big Ubisoft is and how big their support is. But over time, their perception has been eroded. The failure, which has been Watch Dogs, particularly, that kind of like jump-started everything. They had Ghost Recon Breakpoint that didn't land well at all. And then Assassin's Creed has kind of been up and down, even though I think Assassin's Creed kind of been solid for them. Syndicate wasn't bad, I think, as far as performance was concerned. Odyssey was fantastic, but believe it or not, I think the breakout hit out of the last three was Valhalla. Well, then there was this Mirage that I don't think did too well, but Valhalla was like nuts. It was sick. And then now they got this Assassin's Creed Stormlands, I think it is, that's set in feudal Japan. Yasaki, the Black Samurai or the Black Warrior, he's been depicted in many different ways or whatever. He's an actual person, but him being a samurai, not being a samurai, him being the inspiration, I think, for Samurai Champloo or whatever, how he's been depicted has been various, right? And I'm not getting into that discussion. It's making me sick, and I don't even want to get into it. But yeah, they're starting off with him as one of the main heroes, and then there's the female ninja, I believe it is, that she's the other hero, and I think you're going to be controlling both characters together, which to me on the surface just looks awesome. It just takes feudal Japan and not make it the same cookie cutter thing that we've been seeing people try to replicate. Another Ghost of Tsushima, another Rise of Ronin. Like, no, they mixed it up a little bit, and it looks exciting. So we'll see. And I'm not real big on Assassin's Creed, the classic style, but if it's going to be more like an Odyssey, less Valhalla, less classic, but more like Odyssey, I'm all for it. And I think with the dual protagonists, I think that's where they're going to go with this one, and I might actually be interested, but we'll see. But then the bigger thing too is Far Cry. Like Far Cry, it's like old school Windows, right? Where if you remember the old school Windows platforms, they are hit or miss like every other one. You know what I'm saying? Like Windows 95 was great. 98 sucked. Then there was the one after, every other one they suck. That's how it is with Far Cry. Like now every other one sucks. And it's been like that really since the beginning. Far Cry 1 was great. Far Cry 2 sucked. Far Cry 3 was phenomenal, felt like the pinnacle. Far Cry 4 sucked. Far Cry 5 was great. Far Cry 6 sucked. So we'll see what they do with 7. You know what I'm saying? There's this stigma with Ubisoft that they only know how to make certain games, and their games are stagnant. And I don't think it's fair, because when you look at, let's say, PlayStation, who I think is the best publisher out here right now as far as the quality of games, their games are similar, right? Like all their games are, third person, over the shoulder, semi-open world games with puzzles and climbing, right? Am I right or am I wrong? You can make the same argument for PlayStation. It's just that the quality of the games are that good that they can repeat that same ilk, and it pretty much be the same. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some slight variation where you have Horizon Forbidden West, you're shooting bows and arrows and robots, and God of War is more melee, based. There's slight variations, but they're not different altogether. Where you can look at Division, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and look at their slight variations. Division 2 is a cover shooter / RPG, where Ghost Recon is more of a simulated, what do you call that? Command shooter. Kind of like, if you remember, the Desert Storm series, the Conflict of the Desert Storm series, where it's like a tactical command shooter. You know, both look very similar in their approach, but they make definitive enough differences in their core gameplay to where they're distinct. I think the problem with Ubisoft, it's not that they don't diversify enough. I just think that there's too much bloat. That's Ubisoft's problem. It's too much bloat. Meaning they create these huge open worlds and they just put stuff in there and they don't really craft it well to where it's exciting. Like you can do stuff, you know, and this thing is less harder than that. It's not well crafted. That's the difference. Where PlayStation may have less variations in their games, but they're well crafted. And that's Ubisoft's problem. They got to get back to crafting stuff well and doing it consistently. Because if you look at it, they got 3 types of games where, you know, PlayStation, outside of now their games as a service stuff, which is going to vary, but PlayStation has one core aesthetic: over the shoulder, climbing, puzzle solving, semi-open world mechanic. And there's slight variations in the action loop. You know what I'm saying? Like there would be a Ubisoft game, but Ubisoft has like 3 variations right now. Their variations are they have a cover shooter, a third-person cover shooter, or they have the third-person shooter, open world shooter. They have a first-person open world shooter with various mechanics. And then with Rainbow Six Siege, they have a straight first-person multiplayer game, strategic multiplayer game. Those are their 3 core elements, where PlayStation only has 1. And what are we going to do now? Are we going to blame PlayStation for their core mechanic? No. So what you have to do is, and then they do have Spider-Man, where again, that's third person as well, over the shoulder, but it is varied enough. So you could say they have 2. They have the Spider-Man series where, you know, it's a complete open world action game. You know what I'm saying? Third person as well. Opposed to the God of War, The Last of Us, the Horizon, which you can tell is all from the same family subset. Days Gone. And then they have, you know, what they're doing with the Marvel open world subset. Not much variation, but again, it's well crafted. Ubisoft's just got to get back to making well-crafted games to where the level design, the enemy engagement, the things that you can do are exciting enough for the player. But that's Ubisoft's development woes. Let's talk about what they're going through with their direction. So Ubisoft decided to cancel Division 2 Heartlands. And to me, that's a serious problem. Why is that a serious problem? Because Division 2 Heartlands, even though it was based upon the Division 2 lore, and it, you know, had the appearance of Division 2 in so many ways. It was its take on Escape from Tarkov, type of gameplay where it's just a survival mechanic. And it was very solid. It played very well, very challenging. And I've had the honor of doing tests on the game before you guys even knew it existed. I was doing tests on the game. And I and everybody that I played with enjoyed the game. Like, don't get me wrong. I've been in play sessions where we've played games, and in certain areas, you know, in certain parts of the game that test out all the mechanics to make sure that the co-op stuff is working or whatever, we'll get paired up with other testers, and then we have to communicate with each other, right? And trust me, I've communicated with other testers. They have been more than open in saying in some of these games, these games are trash. So testers are very honest and open, especially when we're talking amongst each other, what we think about the game. Because we're even asked when we do our like exit surveys when we're done testing, we're asked, what did you think about this experience? And then we give our thoughts. And we're not discouraged from being honest. Division 2 Heartlands, I would say out of all of the games that I've tested, and I've tested some stinkers and I've tested some great games. Out of all the games that I've tested, Ghost Recon Heartlands got the highest scores. Definitely. Got the highest scores. So, and when I say got the highest scores, I mean, you know, when I'm talking to different people and getting their take on it, and then I'm assessing my take on it. Like when I compare it to the other games that it got the highest scores. Okay. Here are my thoughts. I think that Ubisoft really is, they're in dire straits right now. They're really desperate right now. And because things are not going their way, and they haven't been going their way, like I think they've had 3 fiscal years where they've underperformed significantly, you know, and they might have a bright spot here and there. And I think the biggest thing that has helped Ubisoft, thank goodness, because we would have seen, I think, more drastic a lot sooner, is Valhalla. And Siege. Now, again, Division 2, like Ubisoft is not one of the richest developers in the world. And they're not publicly traded, meaning they don't have like other pipelines of cash that they can just grab and take a hold of. So Ubisoft has to be seeing successes, consistent successes somewhere in order for them to keep moving forward. And I feel like those consistent successes are at the top: Rainbow Six Siege, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and then I feel like third is Division 2. Now, there might be a big gap between 2 and 3, but Division 2 has consistent players all the time. There's a community that, you know, is real big on following updates. Like whenever I go see updates or hear about updates, there's multitudes of people that I'm talking to. There's multitudes of content creators, and they all have huge followings that, you know, as far as gear sets and everything with Division 2. Like Division 2 is, I'm not going to say a top 5, games as a service title, but it's definitely one that's making money for Ubisoft, and that's why they keep investing into it. Okay. And it's being made by their most talented development studio, which is massive. Um, Again, I know people are not who's not familiar with Division 2 and then maybe saw Avatar and was like, I wasn't that impressed with that. I think a lot of people just didn't give Avatar a try. Avatar was not a bad game. It was too complicated for the average gamer to get into, and then for the hardcore gamer like myself who's suffering from Far Cry burnout, that was the wrong model to use for that game, was Far Cry. Don't get me wrong, there are parts of it that are solid, but that Far Cry mechanic, there's burnout from Fallout 6. I just don't think, like, Far Cry needs a rest for a little bit. Like, we don't need to see Far Cry for another 2, maybe 3 years, and then people might appreciate that mechanic again. I think it was just the wrong mechanic to apply to the game, and it didn't do well because of that, right? So you can't tell it with what's it called? I think with this new Star Wars, though, you will be able to see the talents of Massive. I think you'll be able to see the talents of them. I know there was some issues with, visual degradation and stuff like that. I think that will be fixed through Snowdrop, where, of course, it's not going to look like the original trailer. Ubisoft has this thing where they feel like they got to, con people now in their original trailers and then seriously degrade the game when it actually releases. But as we've heard from Digital Foundry about how well Snowdrop Engine can look and some of the marvels that they can make visually, I really believe that they're going to be working on this thing till its release, I believe in October of 2024, and Star Wars is going to be great. With that being said, one of its, I think, more approachable franchises in the Division 2, I feel like that they are doing it a disservice when they take Red Storm from it and they relegate Red Storm to just simply trying to secure Rainbow Six Siege, which is their number one game. I get it. But then X Defiant. Like, I feel like that Ubisoft really believes that X Defiant is going to be the Call of Duty killer. I know they smell blood in the water. I know they do. I know they smell blood in the water. I know that they feel like that they can really take advantage of some of the unfavorable things that people are talking about when it comes to Call of Duty. It scored a 58 meta. I mean, they really think that they can do some stuff with it, but I just don't. And again, I'm not an expert in these type of games. I don't play them, but this version of X Defiant, I don't like it. I liked it when it first came out, when it was more like strategic, but now it's just trying to be super fast and poppy like a Call of Duty, and I just don't like it. And I don't know. And then when I talk to people, about it, they're like, ugh. You know what I'm saying? They're like, ugh. They don't have a lot of faith behind it. I could see at worst telling Red Storm, let's shelve this for now and let's see if we can get back to it. But I truly don't like the idea of them taking Red Storm's talent and having them work on X Defiant. That is unless Division Heartlands is going to be melded into Division 3. If they're going to take Heartlands and put it into Division 3, and that's now going to be how the Dark Zone operates, then there you have it. Because I feel like Division 3 has to have some radical changes. Like 2 was a polish of what 1 should have been. But now I think 3 is going to have to go through some without ditching its cover shooter, core. You're going to have to see some other approaches to it. And I think Heartlands, like the way it moves and feels, like Heartlands is a great start to how you might want to change Division 3. That being said, I am nervous of this move because it smells desperation to me. To me, it says, hey, look, we're Ubisoft and we're hanging on the thread here, and we got to take something that is very unique, or a very unique approach to one of our more popular franchises, and we're going to ditch that for this Call of Duty clone, because it's all about the money right now. That really concerns me. That really concerns me, and that makes me wonder, how bad are things at EA? I mean, at Ubisoft, for one. And for two, if things are that bad, are we going to start seeing them slow down on their cloud? You know what I mean? Because Ubisoft over the past few years, they made some bets. They really doubled down on some bets. Bets number 1 were that games as a service were the way to go. And that's how they needed to structure the overwhelming majority of their content, was via games as a service. They made that bet. They said, look, people want to play more. They want bigger experiences, and they want bigger experiences they can just dig their money, sink their teeth into. And we're going to double down on that. That was bet number 2. That bet isn't working out so well. But bet number 1. But bet number 2 is, we're really going to invest in the cloud. We're really going to support the cloud. We're going to do whatever we need to do in order to make sure that our stuff is available on any cloud service. They made these commitments to Stadia, which I feel, was probably costly as far as resources were concerned. They're still doing so with Amazon Luna. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, I don't feel like that what they're doing with GFN is that costly with them, because GFN's porting is so seamless, and all they got to do is they're just piggybacking off the PC versions of the game. But I really feel like that what's happening here is that they're really in a bad spot because of what they've done with their what do you call it? Because of their support of games as a service, and secondly, how much they double down on the cloud, which I would reckon for them isn't growing at the rate that they thought it would. It still has a high compound annual growth rate. It's still growing rapidly, but I think that they and Google Stadia had this crazy idea that, by now would be like 10, maybe 20% of the market. And there was a lot of loss leading that would have had to go into that. Google wasn't willing to do it. Google, they don't get me wrong. Google unfairly was treated and that complicated things. But what fixes the problem is money. In this case, it would have been money and investing and getting more games, and Google just wasn't willing to do it. They weren't willing to loss lead like that, to where you clearly could see that Microsoft is. And with Google out of it, that really is going to hurt Ubisoft. You know, me personally, I'm always going to be safe. Because I game on GeForce Now. GeForce Now is a reasonable way for me to game. So I feel like that I'm always going to be safe because GeForce Now is how I interact. And I feel like it's the best way to interact with Ubisoft games on the cloud, right? Get the best performance. These are top-notch AAA games. Where else are you going to go with your options right now? That being said, if you game on Luna or you game elsewhere, are they going to be so willing to support you on the cloud? Like, even on xCloud, I don't see Ubisoft showing the support there as they could, right? That could change. But I'm not comfortable with just saying that. Like, oh well, I'm good personally. I don't look at gaming like that. I don't look at what's just good for me. Try to look at everything from what? 5,000 feet. You know, you guys know I say that ad nauseum. When I look at this, I say to myself, well, hold on now. Is that really going to help push cloud gaming along if it's only available on GeForce Now? I mean, look, that gives me enough to argue with and say, look, when you have a very capable cloud gaming platform with latency and fidelity and all that stuff, I mean, this is what I can argue that all day. All I need is GeForce Now to argue that. But again, when I'm looking at this from 5,000 feet, I got to look at the current cloud gaming community. Even though we want to grow, we can't ignore who's there now. And I'm concerned. Like, if this is a warning flag of desperation that they've done this, that they've axed one of their more innovative approaches to their popular franchises to try to double down on some money that they feel like they're that hung up on money that they're trying to double down on their Call of Duty clone, all like that. To me, if that is a sign of desperation, there's more to come. Let's use Xbox, for example. I'm not going to bash Xbox forever. You know, I tried to avoid talking about them here, but I think there are parallels here that are important. When they bought the ABK deal, people thought that this was going to go into them doubling down and adding more support and value to their own ecosystem primarily. And it doesn't look that way. It looks like that they're making a change of course. It looks like that they're rolling more to being a publisher. And many argue, well, what's the point? Because these Activision Blizzard games were third party anyway. Like, what are you doing, Microsoft, to really make them any more valuable? Now, we within the cloud can argue, well, Microsoft with these 10-year deals, they're making these games more available. But again, these are 10-year deals. These are not deals forever. And secondly, that wasn't their original plan with all this. Their original plan was exclusivity. It wasn't until they started getting pushback from regulators that they say, hey, look, we're willing to do this. So I think Xbox is a prime example of when you spend a lot of money, or in Ubisoft's case, you lose a lot of money. Investors are eyeballing you and they're like, okay, how are you going to recoup these funds? As we see with Xbox, they're putting their stuff everywhere. A lot of people argue they're devaluing their own console or their own ecosystem by doing so because they got to recoup this money. So we didn't look at Ubisoft, who they're not dealing with money that they've burned in an acquisition. And look, for sure that ABK money, it's solid. Call of Duty, I feel, is solid. Their money is solid. So yeah, I think it's not a coincidence that these 10-year deals line up with the fact that at its current income rate, if Activision Blizzard continues to bring in 7.8 million or billion, or more a year, they'll make that money back in 10 years or even less. And I think that's more than a coincidence that they're like, hey, we're going to sign 10-year deals. Why? Because we need to make this money back. And the only way that we can ensure that we're making this money back is if we continue to sell this everywhere or even in more places on the cloud for 10 years, right? After those 10 years, then you could see them start locking stuff down, right? I think that was the original intent. But I believe now that they decided that, hey, why even take this risk of going exclusive? Let's just go full multi-plat. Let's have an off branch of our version of the cloud, our hardware, where if you want to play our games in an open sense, like come on Epic Game Store, come on Steam, in an open platform sense, if you want to play our games on a specific device that is more affordable or in a way that's more affordable, right, then come and join us over here. You know what I'm saying? I think it's just more or less a fancy plate for their dish. Their main food is the dish, but they're willing to provide you fancy plates for that dish, right? And that's what I feel is happening with Xbox, and that's because of a purchase. That ABK money is solid. Ubisoft, on the flip side, they're losing money, so it's not solid for them. So what are they going to pull back on? Again, I'm not trying to fearmonger. This is my Fortune 500 experience in making similar decisions as well. Businesses are in it to make money. So when they're not making money, things have to be cut or changed. We tried telling you that in regards to Xbox, and a lot of you people didn't want to listen to me. Now heed my warnings about Ubisoft. Heed my warnings about Ubisoft. Be very, very cautious. And if you are a big time Ubisoft enthusiast and you're on Amazon Luna or something like that, where the port isn't an easy flip or a switch like it is on Shadow or Boosteroid or GFN, like if you're on a closed platform like I said, in Amazon Luna, I'd be very concerned to make sure they don't pull back their support. Now, it's a good thing that I think Amazon Luna is allowing people PC access as well to the native. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure how that works. But again, I would just be very, very cautious. Okay. Because, again, we can't forget that these are businesses. All right, folks, that's it. Those are my thoughts on what's going on here. You guys let me know what you think. I am going to circle back and I'm going to play some Paw World on GeForce Now. We're going to play it on the Game Stream channel for about an hour. And then I'm going to go to MM2K Gaming and where I got some things to say about Division 2. And then I'm going to play some Division 2 on my main channel over there. So if you're into mainstream gaming like I am, check me out over on MM2K Gaming on YouTube. MM2K Gaming News, MM2K Gaming Streams. All right, but that's it. Appreciate everybody. Thanks. Till next time, have a wonderful gaming day. And again, as a reminder, we do this live on Thursdays, and it goes public the following Wednesday. But if you want to be part of if you're listening to the VOD and you want to be part of the live conversation, become a member right now at any level. I meant to say this at the beginning. If you become a member at any level, you'll get access, right? You will get access if you become a member at any level. Right now, we did this as a trial that was supposed to only last a month, and then we've extended it for almost over a year. So pretty soon, you know, because that beginning tier of the membership was mainly just a shout out tier. Like you see the name scrolling at the bottom, That's what it was for. But the content access was going to start at the middle tier. Okay. So join us. We'll let you know in advance when we make that switch. But check us out if you want to be part of the live taping, and then consider, if you're at the bottom tier, bumping up to the next tier up. All right, with that said, we appreciate everybody. Thank you so much. Till next time, have a wonderful gaming day. Peace.